What if I told you there's a spiritual secret hidden in plain sight, but revealed only to those who learn to protect their own light? The question hangs in the air like a soft breeze that opens invisible doors. It doesn't demand an immediate answer. It simply asks for your presence, because deep down, at some point in life, every person has felt that strange sense that their inner light was fading. Not because they were weak, but because the world was asking more than it gave back, demanding more than it offered, draining more than it nourished. There are days when we wake up feeling like something sacred is far away. The soul feels lost in the noise of responsibilities, unspoken pressures, and the kind of looks that don't understand how deep our exhaustion really goes. The light that once burned bright in your chest begins to flicker like a lonely flame in the winds of the modern world, fast, cold, relentless. And yet, even in those moments, there's something inside you that whispers, "Don't give up. Your light is still breathing." Imagine, just for a moment, what it would be like to live with that light fully restored. To walk through your day knowing that an invisible, gentle, sacred presence is wrapping itself around your steps like a protective cloak no hostile glance can penetrate. Imagine waking up each morning with a subtle sense that your light is far too important to be wasted, that it has purpose, direction, and a destiny. And at this point, a figure appears, one who has stood for centuries like an eternal lighthouse, Jesus Christ. Not as a mere institutional symbol, but as the living expression of the greatest spiritual light that ever walked among us. He moved through chaotic landscapes. He encountered pain, despair, and injustice, and yet the light within him never went out. It was as if, even surrounded by human storms, a hidden sun was blazing inside him. That sun guided his words, his gaze, his gestures, and it's that same sun that still touches anyone who draws near to him today. There is a deep contrast between the outer world, loud, rushed, turbulent, and the inner world where the light truly lives. Inside, there is silence, there is space. There is something that cannot be corrupted. That's where the light finds shelter, but very few dare to look at that place with honesty, and fewer still know how to protect it. Everyone talks about spiritual energy. Many repeat ideas, quote phrases, and share concepts, but very few understand the true source of the light. Few grasp the secret that decides whether it grows or fades, and that secret, as simple as it sounds, is so deep it can completely change the way you care for yourself. Today, you're about to discover something you may never have heard explained this clearly, and it can change the way you protect your soul from this day forward. Imagine a person walking through a stormy night. The sky is torn open by fierce winds, and the rain falls as if it wants to wash away every trace of hope. In that person's hands, there is only a small flame. It flickers, trembles, sways, and with every gust of wind, it looks like it might go out. Even so, that person keeps walking. They move slowly through the darkness, shielding the flame with their bare hands, as if they were protecting something more precious than their own life. That simple image holds one of the deepest secrets of human existence, because each one of us, at some point, has walked like that. The flame is your inner light, and the storm is the set of challenges that try to put it out. We all know those invisible winds, losses that tear at the heart, criticism that wounds in silence, emotional exhaustion that settles on your shoulders like a heavy weight, environments that make your soul shrink. There are also pressures no one sees, but that drain your energy from the inside out. The person in that image isn't just holding a flame, they're fighting not to lose themselves. And how many times have you done exactly that without even realizing it? That short story echoes the very journey of Jesus Christ. He carried a light so great it illuminated crowds, and yet he also faced winds that tried to extinguish it. doubts thrown at him by those who didn't understand his message, hostility from hardened hearts, distortions about who he was. Still, his light remained untouched, not because he was insulated from the world, but because his essence was anchored in something greater than any storm. When Christ said, "You are the light of the world," he wasn't just using poetic imagery. He was revealing the divine nature that quietly lives in every person. He saw light where others saw weakness. He saw brilliance where others saw flaws. He saw eternity where others saw limits. What he was saying, between the lines, was this: the light that is in me is also in you, but it's up to you to protect it. Long before him, philosophers and spiritual teachers were already searching for ways to dissolve the inner shadows that keep the light from shining. It wasn't an intellectual pursuit, it was a search for clarity. They knew that the inner light is not just a symbol or metaphor, it is the living expression of consciousness, intention, and purpose. It is the sacred space that connects the human to the divine. When that light is strong, everything around you gains shape, meaning, and direction. When it weakens, the entire world seems to grow darker with it. Now, take a deep breath and think about yourself. When was the last time you felt your light flicker? What was the weight that tried to put it out? What wind touched the flame you carry in your chest? These questions are not accusations, they're invitations. Because on the spiritual path, understanding where your light grew weak is the first step to strengthening it again. Just as Christ taught, the light is not lost. It doesn't vanish. It doesn't burn out forever. It simply grows dim when its protections become fragile. When we allow other people's thoughts, heavy environments, or painful memories to invade the space that should be sacred, the light is not destroyed, it is distracted. And this is where the door to a greater mystery begins to open. Because if the light is never truly lost, then what we really need to learn is not how to reignite it, but how to protect it, how to keep the wind from getting to it, how to walk through the storm without letting our souls go dark. In the next few moments, you'll begin to understand something that's hidden precisely because it's almost too simple to notice. Something that has always been right in front of you, but only reveals itself when spiritual eyes begin to open. The image of the flame is not just poetic, it's an accurate description of how spiritual light works and how it responds to the movements of the human heart. Because here is the truth, your inner light does not depend on the world, it depends on how you care for it. And the secret to protecting it is much closer than you think. Spiritual light is not just a gentle feeling inside us, it is the purest expression of awakened consciousness. It's like an inner sun that doesn't depend on the weather outside to shine. This light is deep perception, moral direction, divine presence, an invisible bridge between the human and the holy. When someone touches this light, they experience not just clarity, but a kind of silence that illuminates. A silence that reveals more than 1,000 words. That's why so many seekers throughout history have tried to explain it. Some said the light is full awareness, a state where the mind stops chasing the future and settles into the present, allowing your true self to come forward. Others said it's moral direction, the inner compass that points toward what is good, even when the path looks confusing. Others still said it is divine presence, the spark that connects us to what is eternal. But underneath all those words, they were all pointing to the same reality. The light is the most intimate expression of who we are when we're not distracted. Jesus Christ knew this. That's why his teachings kept returning to the same themes: intention, watchfulness, purity of heart, and discernment. He called us not to obsess over the outer world, but to notice the inner movement. Watch and pray, he said, not to scare us, but to remind us the light cannot survive without attention. He knew that darkness doesn't barge in through the front door, It slips in through the cracks. There are people who spend their whole lives collecting spiritual concepts, believing that information alone will strengthen their light. But the truth is, the light doesn't grow with information. It grows with presence. And this is where we start to approach the great secret. Most people don't lose their light because of moral failure, lack of character, or spiritual incapacity. They lose it because they lack clarity, they lack discernment, they lack watchfulness. They lose it because they hand their attention over to storms that never deserved even a whisper of their energy. They lose it because they get distracted. They lose it because they get fragmented. They lose it because they allow inner shadows, fear, guilt, resentment, comparison, to slip in quietly and drain their vitality. And then comes the moment of revelation. Your spiritual light is protected when your attention is protected. Too simple. Maybe, but it's exactly this simplicity that the modern world has forgotten. Everything that consumes your attention consumes your energy, and everything that consumes your energy weakens your light. Attention is the guardian of the soul. It decides what comes in and what goes out. It determines what grows and what withers. Evil doesn't have to destroy your light. It just has to scatter it. Christ knew this when he spoke about watching and staying awake. He knew that to keep the light burning, you don't have to fight the darkness. You just have to stop giving your energy to what doesn't nourish you. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. In spiritual language, he was saying, where your attention is, that's where your strength is. Now, imagine your attention as a river. When that river is focused, it has the power to turn wheels, generate energy, transform landscapes. But when it splits into 1,000 tiny streams, it loses its force. That's exactly what happens to the human soul. When your attention is unified, your light grows. When it scatters, your light fades. This is the secret few truly grasp. Protecting your light is not about fighting the dark. It's about keeping your energy from leaking into empty spaces. Darkness doesn't need your permission. Your distraction is enough. Now let's go deeper into this secret with 3 pillars that support the inner light. Intention, the fuel of the light. Intention is the direction your soul is pointed in. When you act with purpose, your light grows stronger. When you act on impulse, without awareness, your light becomes fragile. Christ walked with absolute intention. Every gesture reflected his essence. He knew who he was, where he was going, and what he represented. And when you define your intention, your light finds fuel to expand. Inner watchfulness, the shield of the light. To watch is not to live paranoid. It's to perceive. It's feeling when something is trying to invade your inner space. It's recognizing when a thought starts poisoning your peace. It's noticing when a conversation begins to distort your vibration. Watchfulness is sacred attention. Christ often withdrew into silence, not to escape, but to strengthen his light before lighting the way for others. Coherence between word and action, the fortress of the light. The light grows when your inner world and your outer world line up. When what you say is supported by how you live, when what you promise your own heart is what you actually offer to the world. Incoherence drains energy. Coherence multiplies it. You've probably felt this without naming it. Moments when your light dimmed because of toxic environments, pointless arguments, old memories that stole your clarity, or because you gave your attention to distractions that seemed harmless, but slowly weakened your essence over time. The soul knows when it's wasting its light. But there are also those moments when you've already felt your light return, maybe during a quiet pause you didn't expect, a heartfelt prayer, a deep breath taken with intention, a moment of inner honesty. Moments when your attention returned to yourself and your light flared back up as if it had just been waiting for your return. The light doesn't go out when the world grows dark. It fades when we disconnect from the source that sustains us, and that source is always within. Christ knew this. That's why he withdrew to quiet places. That's why he sought solitude. That's why he walked with firm purpose. He didn't expect the world to be gentle. He simply refused to hand his light over to the world. When you protect your attention, you protect your light. And when you protect your light, everything around you begins to take on a new radiance. But to do that, you have to recognize the invisible enemies, the ones that drain your energy before you even notice, weakening the flame you so desperately need to keep alive. That's what we're going to talk about now. There are silent forces that move toward the light without making a sound. They don't arrive like storms. They don't knock on the door. They don't announce themselves. Instead, they slip through the cracks of the soul, draining the sacred energy that should remain protected. They are invisible enemies, not because they don't exist, but because they disguise themselves inside your routines, habits, ignored emotions, and the automatic choices you make without thinking. The first force is rush. It seems harmless, even normal, but it's one of the most destructive energies when it comes to spiritual depth. Rush steals presence. It steals sensitivity. It steals your ability to notice what's going on inside you. In a hurry, the soul can't breathe. The light has no space to expand. Jesus walked without hurry. He observed, touched, listened. Light doesn't flourish in overworked ground. It grows where there is room to exist. The second force is heavy environments. There are places that weigh on your soul even when nothing obvious is happening. The air feels dense. Your heart feels squeezed. Your breathing gets shallow. These are environments where the atmosphere turns murky, where your inner light feels out of place. Christ avoided places where hardened hearts poisoned the atmosphere. He knew the light weakens when it's exposed too long to what doesn't resonate with truth. The third force is words without purpose. Those conversations that seem small but drain energy like underground rivers. Words full of gossip, complaining, criticism, or empty distraction. Words that don't lift, don't build, don't illuminate. Spiritual light is sensitive to the sound of the words we choose. They shape the vibration of our inner space. Jesus didn't speak to fill silence. Every phrase carried intention. Through his own voice, he showed that the light grows stronger when we refuse to waste energy on soulless talk. The fourth force is relationships that drain. This isn't about blaming or rejecting anyone. It's about noticing when your light becomes smaller in the presence of certain people. There are those who, consciously or not, pull energy from everything around them, maybe from their own pain, their emptiness, their inner chaos. Jesus embraced people, but he also knew when to withdraw. He loved deeply, but he did not allow his essence to be consumed by someone else's imbalance. Light needs compassionate boundaries to survive. The fifth force is the deepest one, emotional self-betrayal. This happens when you know what you feel but ignore it. You know what you need but keep putting it off. You know what hurts but you stay anyway. Self-betrayal is when your soul asks for care and your mind responds with silence. When your heart begs for rest and your body takes on more weight, when your inner truth cries out for honesty and you choose routines that suffocate it. Jesus didn't teach truth just to be heard. He taught it to be lived. He knew that lying to yourself is the most dangerous act against your own light. It's an inner cut that bleeds without being seen. Each one of these enemies moves slowly. First, they steal your presence, then your clarity, then your strength, until, little by little, your light begins to flicker, not because the world has grown darker, but because you allowed these silent thieves to enter without watchfulness. Christ said we don't put a lamp under a bowl, and yet that's exactly what we often do. We hide our light under rush, under heavy atmospheres, under empty words, under relationships we don't know how to balance, under truths we're too afraid to face. In the end, the light is not usually attacked from the outside in. It's weakened from the inside out when we fail to notice these invisible thieves. Now that they've been exposed, the protection can finally begin. Protecting your spiritual light is not about a complicated ritual or a mystery reserved for a chosen few. It's a daily, quiet, sacred practice. And it all begins with small choices that change the vibration of your soul. Before major transformations, there are 3 simple practices that can start strengthening your light today. The first is to guard your attention with spiritual watchfulness. Notice where your energy is going. Every thought you feed, every conversation you accept, every environment you remain in is shaping your light. Ask yourself, does this lift me up or scatter me? Your attention is like a door, and you are the guard. Christ said, "Watch," because he knew the light isn't lost by the power of the dark, but by the distractions we allow in. The second practice is to cultivate moments of daily silence. Silence is the cradle where the light is reborn. Just a few minutes. A little space where the world doesn't reach you, where your soul can breathe, where God's presence draws near. Jesus sought silence before every important step. He withdrew to lonely places not to hide, but to reconnect with the source. Silence clears your vision, calms your chest, and restores the intensity of a light that was about to go out. The third practice is something we could call spiritual releasing. What is not mine, I do not carry. How many times have you carried guilt that wasn't yours, expectations you never chose, burdens someone else placed on your shoulders? The soul is freed when we give back to the world what belongs to the world and keep only what is truly ours. Try these 3 practices for just one day. Pay attention to the subtle shift, almost invisible yet deeply real, in your energy. You'll begin to realize the light was always with you. It just needed protection. There was once a person who walked through life as if crossing an invisible desert. On the outside, everything looked normal. Work, routines, responsibilities, quick interactions. But on the inside, there was a heavy silence, a steady sense of soft darkness, as if the light that once burned brightly had become nothing more than a memory. This person woke up tired, fell asleep restless, and over time felt that something essential was slipping away without a name. They didn't know how to describe what they were carrying. They only knew their soul felt smaller, until one day, with no big spectacle, no dramatic revelation, they heard a simple phrase that moved through their chest like a divine breath. Your spiritual light is protected when your attention is protected. In that moment, something quiet awakened within them, as if the flame, which had turned almost to ash, flickered again, asking for just a little more room, a little more care, a little more air. From that day on, this person began to look at their life differently. They realized they were giving attention to environments that drained their energy. They realized they were accepting conversations that emptied their spirit. They realized they lived in constant rush, as if they were always late to their own life. They realized they were carrying burdens that were never theirs to carry. And more than anything, they realized they had drifted away from themselves, and in drifting away from themselves, they had drifted away from their light. So they decided to try, just try. They began by protecting their attention, choosing more carefully where they placed their energy. Then they added small pockets of daily silence, short pauses where the soul could breathe. And every night, before sleeping, they whispered softly, "Today I return what is not mine." Little by little, something changed. The light that had been so fragile began to take shape again. Vitality came back like water over dry ground. Shadows that once felt enormous started to look smaller, and this person realized there was a sacred space inside that had never been destroyed. It had only been asleep. Whenever doubt crept in, they remembered Christ. How he walked through human deserts with his light intact. How he withdrew to renew his strength before taking the next step. How he saw each person as a bearer of a divine spark. That memory became their guide, their anchor, their lighthouse. Over time, this person didn't just get their light back, they discovered a new way to walk, more present, more aware, more aligned with their own truth. And the transformation wasn't a sudden miracle, but a slow, beautiful sunrise, light spilling gradually over everything. In the end, they understood. The light had never left. It was just waiting to be protected. Spiritual light is a gift placed inside every human being. It doesn't depend on your achievements. It doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't ask for credentials, only presence. But even though its origin is divine, its protection is a deeply human choice. Every single day, when you open your eyes, you decide whether you'll let the world scatter your light or choose to guard it as the treasure it truly is. Throughout this journey, you've moved through metaphors, stories, memories, deep reflections, all to arrive at the same essential point. Light is fragile and powerful at the same time. It blossoms when cared for and weakens when forgotten. And maybe the most important discovery is this: protecting your light doesn't mean building walls. It means cultivating discernment. It doesn't mean shutting out the world. It means learning to choose what deserves to enter your heart. Remember the question that opened this path. What if you knew the secret to protecting your spiritual light? Now you do. Now you understand. Now you see what was once hidden. The secret is not in something distant, extraordinary, or reserved for great sages. It's in your attention, in the quiet focus that shapes your inner world. In that point of presence where your soul breathes, that's where your light is born, reborn, and made strong. And that's where the teaching of Jesus Christ gains even more depth. The lamp of the body is the eye. He was talking about attention, spiritual sight, the awareness that decides what ignites the soul and what extinguishes it. If you've come this far, you haven't just heard the secret, you've walked through it. And that already lights your next step. Now, my hope is that you'll carry this light forward, that you'll practice gentle watchfulness, that you'll cultivate the silence that restores, that you'll hand back to the world what doesn't belong in your heart, that you'll keep burning the flame God placed inside you. And before we close, I want to invite you. Share in the comments what touched your soul the most on this journey. Which image stirred something inside you? Which insight brought clarity? Your reflection might be the light someone else needs to read today. And if this video helps strengthen your light, even for just a moment, subscribe so this flame can keep being nourished by new messages. Because in the end, the light you protect today will be the light that guides your next steps.